Good morning, welcome to IG's Early Morning Call. It's Friday, 6th of October. Let's take a look at the headlines as we continue to monitor what's going on in the foreign exchange markets for the dollar as we await today's non-farm payrolls number, one of the big swing points doubtless of the week. And we've got the dollar index remaining pretty much where it ended out the session yesterday. All this comes as the UK housing market gets further analysis. The Halifax house price index out this morning, falling for the 6th straight month, but less than expected, mirroring what we heard earlier this week from the nationwide. And in the oil sector, it's all about expansion for Exxon Mobil. Reports suggesting it's set to acquire Pioneer Natural Resources. $60 billion, it's a big deal. That's according to sources in today's press. Let's take a look at volatility. Technically, we're up today after 2 days of losses. I think the message is that it's been a week where we've seen some sort of recovery in the VIX. And this market is not too far away from the highs, but not too far away from the lows. A bit of sort of Goldilocks at the moment, 1875. But what it means is today that we do have some pockets of interest on the upside. London is one of them. I think perhaps probably going to be one of the better performers on the European markets. We're up for a second day in a row. And we're opening above yesterday's cash close at 74.78 is where we're trading at there at the moment. So an indication, I think, that we've got a stronger start. Stronger start as well, possibly in France. Let's take a look at France as well, because this is where the market is showing other gains against other markets where we're seeing losses. And losses, I think, to come this morning on the German DAX. We do have a green candle, but you saw the move that we saw up yesterday, and I don't think we're going to open higher today on the DAX. There's a continued concern about the outlook for economic data in the German economy. We'll take a look at that in some more detail in just a few moments' time. Let's move on to take a look at what's been happening in today's session for the Asia-Pacific markets, where the Nikkei has ended the day down. But we have seen a little bit of recovery from the recent lows, broadly speaking, this week. But it really is a story of just a small retracement in what is otherwise a move that we've got. The market's on the way down. Hang Seng Stock Index up 1.25%. We've seen no trade in the Chinese markets at all this week. Hang Seng Stock Index up on hopes that there might be some vestiges of recovery coming through in the Asia-Pacific economies. S&P ASX 200 up 0.4%. Wall Street closed last night, just before the market closed. On Wall Street, we saw the release from the SEC investigating Musk over 2022 purchases of the Twitter stock that he made. We'll have more on this in a moment, but that's the backdrop to what we saw yesterday. In fact, there wasn't much move at the close of yesterday's session on the Dow. Nasdaq Composite down 0.1%. S&P 500, same sort of percentage move. Let's take a look at what we've seen The market hasn't really moved much on from where we closed out Friday's session. So 14,711 is the Nasdaq's trade at the moment. And I think it's unlikely we're going to see much of a move in the early trade on today's session on the IG platform ahead of the non-farm payroll data out at 1:30 p.m. We'll be live, of course, on the IG platform at 1:30 with Angeline taking a look ahead of the open of the US markets. And as I said, I think really that non-farm payroll data is really going to be the swing point for the week, depending on where it goes. If it's as weak as we saw the ADP on Wednesday, I think we could see a flourish at the end of the week on the stock markets and possibly a further drop for the dollar basket. But we'll have to see how things develop at 1:30 p.m. today on the live webinar across the IG platform. We've seen house prices come out here in the UK from the Halifax, and it mirrors what we saw from the nationwide earlier this week. Halifax house price index falling for a sixth straight month by 0.4% month on month, less than the 0.8% drop the market had anticipated. Year on year, that's a drop of 4.7%. You'll remember the nationwide reported that its house price index fell 5.3% in the year to September, with drops in prices in every region of the country as rising interest rates continue to squeeze the market, which is really what is mirrored by what's happening on the Halifax, as we've seen there today, the reports coming through. Just want to show you what's happening on the 10-minute candle chart for the sterling trade. It is down, but look, it's not really moving much. I don't think this is really a number that necessarily moves on unless it's a really outstanding number, which it isn't this morning. It's pretty much in line with expectations. I think more likely trade around sterling today is going to be on what's happening with non-farm payrolls. More on that in just a minute. Let's catch up with what's happening on the German economy. As I promised, we've got some more details coming through on Germany. Factory orders rebounded in the German economy, despite the fact we've got many predicting that the German economy is going to continue to suffer. Factory orders up 3.9% in August after an 11.7% drop in the month of July. I don't know how far away this is from what was expected, but nonetheless, this does show a recovery in what was otherwise a very poor summer for the German economy. Now, non-farm payrolls, expectations are there for a reading of 170,000 job creations when the data comes through at 1:30 p.m. today UK time. The unemployment rate's expected to fall to 3.7% from 3.8% in the prior month. Average hourly earnings seen at 0.3% month on month, 4.3% on an annualized basis. The big question is what does the market want? Well, clearly equity markets, investors would like to see the NFP on the weak side as they wait for the Fed to reverse its tightening cycle. But I think the main trade is going to be around what's happening with the dollar. Earlier this week, stock markets, of course, pulled back after stronger than expected job openings and reacted positively to weak ADP data. Let's show you what's happening with the dollar basket today. A small climb in context of the declines we've seen over the last couple of days. It's still within this rising channel. So I'm not fazed necessarily by this. If you do have a long position on this, your stop would go under the underside of this rising line of support. So you'll stop at around about the 105.50 level, currently trading at 106.20. And if we do get a strong number out from today's jobs report, expect this market to move up. In other words, you'd be buying dollars against a whole basket of currencies. If we see a weak number, it's a sell of these dollars. And of course, the way to trade this is euro dollar trade, currently trading at 105.33. Now, if you're short on this, stop goes above around about the 106 level, above where we are, with a view to taking it down to recent lines of support. And we would then see a break of this line that we got here at 105.16. And if we saw a strong number, then that's what would happen. And you could possibly break this line at 104.48 for euro dollar trade. In other words, a weakness in the euro in the face of that stronger dollar. If we see a weak number coming through, which would possibly seem to be the potential risk here, you then buy euros against the US dollar and take it up to and past the 106 level, which is the area of interest to watch out for from where we are. So it's really a question of taking your pick on this and seeing where it goes. Just to quickly check in with what's been happening with the dollar against the Japanese yen. Dollar's up at 148.93. Now, let's go on to corporate news headlines. A few companies worth watching for this morning. Some of them are here in the UK. One particular one is JD Wetherspoon. It's actually seen quite good numbers out this morning. These are full year figures before adjustments, like-for-like sales up 12.7%. Profit before tax rising from a 30 million loss last time to 42.6 million profit this time around. Total sales up 10.6%. The interesting thing is that under normal circumstances, you would get companies trying to encourage investors in the business and issue a dividend. But this is not the case for Tim Martin and the group and the board at JD Wetherspoon. They've erred on the side of caution, and they've continued with no dividend, no final dividend for the full year. Company also says the most recent quarter has seen revenues up 9.9%, which gives you an indication as to how the company has opened this new year ahead. Stock will open at 695.5 after 2 days of gains. I think this is a positive stock story. If you do go long on this, your stock goes under the underside of yesterday's candle with a view to taking it higher. We'll have to see how things open at the top of the hour. One of the other stock stories I think could be worth a mention has been confirmed this morning. GSK is selling part of its existing stake in the consumer healthcare company Haleon. You remember it sold Haleon off to the market, retaining a fair chunk of it to the market back in the middle of last summer. Let me just quickly bring up a chart of Haleon just to show you what's happening. That's the business it sold off in summer 2022. Successful flotation at 335 pence a share, which is this blue line here. And yesterday we closed above it, 337.1. This values the company at $28.5 billion, and it became the world's biggest company of its type. This sale, 2.9 percentage point stake in Haleon by GSK, will take the current stake of 10.3% down to 7.4%, and it'll take something like around about 910 million sterling onto the balance sheet of GlaxoSmithKline. What will it do to Haleon stock today? Potentially it's a downside stock story today for Haleon. It's been confirmed this morning. I do want to show you what's happening with GSK. It's dropped recently. The stock will open at 14.79. I think this is a positive stock story for GSK. Earlier this year, it sold 240 million shares in Haleon to raise around about £804 million and lowered its stake from 12.9%, which it initially retained in the business when Haleon was floated last year. GlaxoSmithKline, you can see that was the point at which it sold Haleon because Haleon had previously been part of the business. And I think it did the right thing, obviously, and it's selling at a bit of a profit. The Haleon sale today comes through with confirmation from GSK. So that could be a positive stock story for GSK. Let's stay on the charts and just quickly wind in a couple of other stock stories today. This is De La Rue. This is one of the world's largest bank note printers. It also prints things like security documents like passports and so forth. It's forecast half-year adjusted operating profit to be marginally ahead of its previous expectations. Now, this stock's going to open at 60.1 pence when the markets get underway at the top of the hour. Look at this. From the lows that we had back in June this year, it's gained 122.95%. The company says it's encouraged by a recovery in currency demand and strength in its authentication business. So a positive stock story potentially at the start of today's trade. Look out for Levi Strauss shares at the open on Wall Street later on today. The group cut its annual forecast last night for the second time this year after seeing the stock down 1.6% in extended trade last night. While net income came in broadly in line at 28 cents, net revenue fell to $1.51 billion from $1.52 billion this time last year. And that missed analyst estimates of $1.54 billion. But Levi went on to forecast revenue to be flat to up 1% in the fiscal 2023 numbers. And the company has had a prior estimate of between 1.5% to 2.5% growth. In North America, Levi Strauss has seen its shares and its stock come down. The company has had all sorts of problems with the outlook in the States, and the States remains one of its most difficult areas of the business. Now, Levi Strauss has got a higher exposure to middle income America, between 50,000 and 100,000 income, and is particularly affected by higher borrowing costs and high prices. Net revenue at Levi's American segment fell 5%, even as its direct to customers rose 12%. Let's take a look at the share price chart for Levi Strauss, which closed out yesterday's session at 13.21. It's not an all-session stock on the IG platform, but certainly it could well fall at the start of today's trade. It was down 1.6% in extended trade last night, and I think that we could well end up seeing a little bit of a drop at the start of today's trade for Levi's. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, the US financial regulator, is taking Elon Musk to court. The move is over his refusal to testify in an investigation into his purchases of Twitter stock and his statements surrounding the $44 billion takeover of the social media platform. In a filing in a California federal court on Thursday, the Securities and Exchange Commission said it was conducting an ongoing non-public investigation into whether Musk had violated various provisions of the federal securities laws in connection with his purchases of Twitter stock and his 2022 statements and SEC filings related to Twitter. Now, this is not possible to trade this story directly, so it brings into question again, though, about Elon Musk's capacity as whether he's a fit and proper person in continuing to lead a business like Tesla. It could have a potentially negative effect on Tesla. Tesla stock will open at 9 o'clock this morning, or sessions on the IG platform. Meanwhile, separately, Tesla has announced it's cutting prices of its Model 3 and Model Y vehicles in the US. The Model 3 saloon is cheaper by a margin of $1,250 to a total price tag of $38,990, while prices of the Model Y long-range variant were cut by $2,000 to $48,490. Prices for the standard Model 3 have come down by around about 17% since the start of the year to help the company compete better with Chinese exports in this area of electric vehicles. We've seen a small pullback recently in deliveries, a rise rather year on year, but a pullback on what was expected as a result of some of what's going on at the moment at Tesla. We just had a look at Tesla stock, which will open at $259.55. Now, in the oil sector, Exxon Mobil is in advanced talks to acquire Pioneer Natural Resources, according to the Wall Street Journal today. The deal could value the Permian basin share producer at about $60 billion. This would be Exxon's largest acquisition since Exxon sold $81 billion deal for Mobil back in 1998. I want to show you the value and the share price chart for Pioneer first of all, to show you what could happen if this deal does come to pass. This is not an all-session stock on the IG platform, but do expect it to rise at the start of today's trade. It has a current valuation of around about $50 billion. And if it's a $60 billion deal, that's one heck of a premium to the price on the stock markets today. So potentially we could well see a rise at the start of today's session for Pioneer. Also watching what's happening with Exxon. Now, this has seen some big declines this week on the back of the drop in the price of oil. But Exxon Mobil would then double its production in the Permian Basin. Exxon produced a record 620,000 barrels of oil in the Permian Basin in the second quarter. Pioneer's output in the basin averaged 711 barrels of oil per day, so more than double Exxon Mobil's production. A spokesperson for Exxon and Pioneer declined to comment on these reports in reports in the Wall Street Journal. But I think certainly it could well be a stock story for today. Talking about what's happening in the oil space, let's go first of all with the price of oil as we see things at the moment today. I want to bring up what's happening with US crude. It's been a down week heavily on the markets this week, and it continues to trade negatively in today's sessions, concerns about potential demand. But nonetheless, it's quite obvious that there is still nonetheless a restriction in supplies, which have up until this point of retracement this week. That is an interesting move that we've seen. And I think this move is something to do with the fact that there's concerns about the outlook for the global economies. We'll have to see how non-farm payrolls go today. But we can see this is now resting at the 76.4% retracement, 81.51. If we get a break of that, we're then on the way down to the 77.56 total retracement, taking us down then to levels not seen since the 24th of August. We'll have to see how things develop today with non-farm payrolls. You got a strong non-farm payrolls figure through, then the Fed will have to act on interest rates, and we well end up seeing further declines for the price of oil. Last Friday, Baker Hughes' total rig count fell by a margin of 7 to 623. A drop due mostly to oil rigs in operation. The number of oil rigs functioning fell by 5 to 502 to a new 19-month low. This takes more oil off the market, which technically should, in theory, give further upside to the price of oil, but that's clearly not been happening. Let me just quickly update you as well on what's happening with gold. Holding recent lows at 18.19, you can see on this chart here for the price of the precious metal. And just I thought I'd update you as well on what's happening with the price of copper. It continues to trade below the $8,000 per ton. 78.94. It's desperately looking like it wants to break this line at 78.66. You get a break of that, then there's not much then all the way on the way down then to these levels of support down here at around about the 7,400 level. And that's it from me with a look at what's happening ahead of the European Open today. Do watch out for Delarue. Do watch out for JD Wetherspoon at the start of today's trade. Two stocks to watch here in the London markets. Also, the confirmation this morning with Glaxo selling another portion of Haleon could be positive for Glaxo stock at the start of today's trade. We're back at 10:30 with Charting the Markets.